Chapter 2. Sit Down. Gandhi. Under the impact of the First World War, the tide of protest rose higher in India, and even moderate congressmen began to ask for home rule. In September 1915, Mrs. Annie Besant, a remarkable Englishwoman who has written her name permanently into the history of modern India, announced the formation of a Home Rule League and persuaded the veteran Dadabhai to become its president. Mrs. Besant was then approaching 70. Born in 1847, she had lived a stormy life as atheist, socialist, women's rights advocate and theosophist. She regarded herself as the reincarnation of Hypatia of Alexandria and Giordano Bruno, both of whom met violent deaths, and in her autobiography, she says she longed to be the bride of Christ. Though a foreigner, she was an accepted and respected leader of India. An eloquent speaker, trenchant writer and brave politician, she edited Indian publications and made India her home. She died in 1933. In 1892, Mrs. Besant started a school at Benares, the holy city on the Ganges, and in 1916 this institution, guided by Pandit Malavia, was expanded into the Hindu University Central College. An illustrious gathering of notables attended the three-day opening ceremonies in February 1916. The Viceroy was there, and so were numerous bejeweled Maharajas, Maharanis, Rajas and high officials in all their dazzling panoply. On February 4th, Gandhi addressed the meeting. It broke up before he could finish. India had never heard such a forthright, unvarnished speech. Gandhi spared no one, least of all those present. His Highness, the Maharaja, who presided yesterday over our deliberations, Gandhi said, spoke about the poverty of India. Other speakers laid great stress upon it. But what did we witness in the great panel in which the foundation ceremony was performed by the Viceroy, Lord Hardinge? Certainly, a most gorgeous show, an exhibition of jewelry which made a splendid feast for the eyes of the greatest jeweler who chose to come from Paris. I compare with the richly bedecked noblemen the millions of the poor. And I feel like saying to those noblemen, there is no salvation for India unless you strip yourselves of this jewelry and hold it in trust for your countrymen in India. Hear, hear, students in the audience exclaimed. Many dissented. Several princes walked out. Gandhi was not deterred. Whenever I hear of a great palace rising in any great city of India, he went on, be it in British India or be it in the India ruled by our great chiefs, I become jealous at once and say, oh, it is the money that has come from the agriculturists. There cannot be much spirit of self-government about us, he exclaimed, if we take away or allow others to take away from the peasants almost the whole of the results of their labor. Our salvation can only come through the farmer. Neither the lawyers, nor the doctors, nor the rich landlords are going to secure it. Congress beware. Gandhi was unfurling his flag before the mighty ones of India. It was the flag of the lowly. The view of the student world to which my remarks are supposed to be addressed this evening, Gandhi declared, consider for one moment that the spiritual life, for which this country is noted and for which this country has no rival, can be transmitted through the lip. Pray believe me you are wrong. You will never be able merely through the lip to give the message that India, I hope, will one day deliver to the world. I venture to suggest to you that we have now reached almost the end of our resources in speech, not sign-making, and it is not enough that our ears be feasted, that our eyes be feasted, but it is necessary that our hearts have got to be touched and that our hands and feet have got to be moved. It is a matter of deep humiliation and shame for us, Gandhi continued, that I am compelled this evening under the shadow of this great college, and in this sacred city, to address my country not sign men in a language that is foreign to me. Suppose, Gandhi mused, that we had been receiving education during the past 50 years through our vernaculars, what should we be today? We should have today a free India. We should have our educated men not as if they were foreigners in their own land, but speaking to the heart of the nation. They would be working amongst the poorest of the poor, and whatsoever they would have gained during the past 50 years would be a heritage of the nation. This sentiment provoked scattered applause. If you find me this evening speaking without reserve, Pray consider that you are only sharing the thoughts of a man who allows himself to think audibly, and if you think that I seem to transgress the limits that courtesy imposes upon me, pardon me for the liberty I may be taking. I visited the Viswanath temple last evening, and as I was walking through those lanes, these were the thoughts that touched me. I speak feelingly as a Hindu. Is it right that the lanes of our sacred temple should be as dirty as they are? The houses round about are built anyhow. The lanes are narrow and tortuous. If even our temples are not models of roominess and cleanliness, what can our self-government be? Shall our temples be abodes of holiness, cleanliness and peace as soon as the British have retired from India? Gandhi stayed close to earth. Even the most delicate ears should hear the facts of life. It is not comforting to think, he said, that people walk about the streets of Indian Bombay under the perpetual fear of dwellers in the storied buildings spitting upon them. Many Indian eyebrows were lifted. Was it right for an Indian to say this with Englishmen present? And what had spit not something to do with the Benares University or independence? Gandhi sensed the audience's antagonism, yet he was relentless. He traveled a good deal in third-class railway carriages, he said. Conditions were not altogether the fault of the management. Indians spat where others had to sleep. Students misbehave in the trains. They can speak English, he commented sarcastically, and they have worn Norfolk jackets and therefore claim the right to force their way in and command seating accommodation. I am setting my heart bare. Surely we must set these things right in our progress towards self-government. The day's ration of unpalatable thoughts was still incomplete. There remained the unmentionable. It is my bounden duty, Gandhi asserted, to refer to what agitated our minds these last 2 or 3 days. All of us have had many anxious moments while the Viceroy was going through the streets of Benares. There were detectives stationed in many places. A movement went through the invited guests. This was not to be talked about in public. It was for Gandhi. We were horrified / he revealed. We asked ourselves, why this distrust? Is it not better that even Lord Hardinge should die than live a living death? But a representative of the mighty sovereign may not. He might find it necessary even to live a living death. But why was it necessary to impose these detectives on us? Gandhi not only asked the unpalatable question, he gave the more unpalatable reply. We may foam, we may fret, Gandhi said about the Indian reaction to the detectives. We may resent, but let us not forget that India of today in her impatience has produced an army of anarchists. I am myself an anarchist, but of another type. Their anarchism is a sign of fear. If we trust and fear God, we shall have to fear no one, not Maharajas, not viceroys, not the detectives, not even King George. The audience was growing unruly and arguments broke out in various parts of the assembly. Gandhi uttered a few more sentences when Mrs. Besant, who presided, called out to him, "Please stop it." Gandhi turned around to her and said, "I await your orders. If you consider that, by my speaking as I am not serving the country and the empire, I shall certainly stop." Mrs. Besant, coldly, "Please explain your object." Gandhi, "I am explaining my object. I simply..." He could not be heard above the din. "Go on," some shouted. "Sit down, Gandhi," others shouted. Decorum restored. Gandhi defended Mrs. Besant. "It is because she loves India so well and she considers that I am erring in thinking audibly before you young men." But he preferred to speak frankly. "I am turning the searchlight towards ourselves. It is well to take the blame sometimes." At this moment, many dignitaries left the platform, the commotion mounted, and Gandhi had to stop. Mrs. Besant adjourned the meeting. From Benares, Gandhi went home to Sabarmati. Distances are great in India and communications bad. Few people can read and fewer possess radios. Therefore, the ear of India is big and sensitive. In 1916, the ear began to catch the voice of a man who was courageous and indiscreet, a little man who lived like a poor man and defended the poor to the face of the rich, a holy man in an ashram. Gandhi was not yet a national figure. The hundreds of millions did not know him. But the fame of the new Mahatma was spreading. India stands in awe of power and wealth. But it loves the humble servant of the poor. Possessions, elephants, jewels, armies, palaces win India's obedience. Sacrifice and renunciation win its heart. Matthew Arnold wrote. The East bowed low before the blast in patient, deep disdain. And it bowed low, with the same disdain, before the East that coveted riches and might. The Indian, therefore, understands as well as appreciates renunciation. India has many monks and ascetics. But Gandhi's renunciation caused a larger echo, because he opposed renunciation for the mere sake of renunciation. A mother, he observed in a letter, would never by choice sleep in a wet bed, but she would gladly do so in order to spare the dry bed for her child. Gandhi renounced in order to serve.